AK-47, AKM. Mikhail Kalashnikov began working on the AK-47 in the closing phase of the Second World War, when Soviet planners sought a select fire rifle around an intermediate cartridge after seeing the German STG-44 in action. The original design went through trials in 1947 and entered Soviet service soon after. Fixed-stock milled receiver rifles appeared by 1948–49, and the lighter, stamped receiver AKM followed in 1959. Production ran not only in the USSR but across allies and licensees, with China's Type 56 becoming its own prolific branch. The rifle fires 7.62 by 39 mm from a long-stroke gas piston with a rotating bolt and feeds primarily from 30-round magazines. Though 10, 20, 40, and drum options exist, typical cyclic rate hovers near 600 rounds per minute, muzzle velocity around 715 meters per second, and practical effective distance in the few hundred-meter band. Tapered cartridge geometry, generous clearances, and robust piston travel explain why the system tolerates dirt, sand, and indifferent maintenance better than many contemporaries. Service and notoriety span Cold War proxy wars, the Vietnam conflict, the Soviet-Afghan War, and innumerable insurgencies. An AK even appears on Mozambique's flag, which says something about cultural association. Films and video games reinforced that image. Lord of War and first-person shooters cemented the idea of the default rifle of modern conflict. Estimates commonly cite on the order of 100 million AK pattern rifles made since 1947, many outside Russia, and not always under license. The platform remains in frontline or reserve service in dozens of states and is widespread on gray and black markets. Glock. Gaston Glock's team developed the original polymer-framed Glock pistol between 1979 and 1982 in response to Austria's requirement to replace the P-38. The Glock 17 debuted in 1982 and entered Austrian service as the P-80. The compact Glock 19 arrived soon after as a shorter slide, shorter grip variant for duty and concealed rolls. The concept was a striker-fired, corrosion-resistant pistol that simplified manual controls and maintenance while meeting NATO-type endurance and drop safety standards. Mechanically, it is a short recoil, tilting barrel design. The safe-action fire control stack integrates trigger, firing pin, and drop safeties without a manual thumb safety. Polygonal rifling dominated early barrels. Gen 5 models introduced the Glock Marksman barrel with revised rifling for consistency. Magazine capacities vary by frame size, but the family supports everything from compact single stacks to 33-round factory magazines. Nitrided surface treatments like Tenifer on earlier production improved wear and corrosion resistance. Law enforcement agencies across the United States and many countries adopted Glock pistols through the 1990s and 2000s, and military usage ranges from standard duty to special purpose roles. Popular culture amplified the name. Glock became a near-generic shorthand for a modern striker pistol in film. Glock reports tens of millions of pistols produced across generations and factories in Austria and the United States, with licensed and unlicensed clones appearing elsewhere. The Glock 19 remains in active production in Gen 5 form, and contracts with national police and militaries continue. M16 AR-15 family. Eugene Stoner's AR-10 informed a lighter 5.56 mm design that became the AR-15. Colt acquired the rights and, after early Air Force and Special Forces interest, the rifle entered U.S. service as the M16 in the mid-1960s. The Vietnam War marked its combat debut. Iterative changes followed. The M16A1 added a forward assist and chrome lining. The M16A2 revised sights and introduced 3-round burst. The A3-A4 generations added rail interfaces and modularity. The operating system is a gas-tapped rotating bolt, where expanding gas acts within the carrier, often called direct impingement. Standard rifles use a 20-inch barrel and 30-round Stanag magazines, Chambering shifted from early 223 Remington M193 to 5.56 by 45 mm NATO and modern loads. Effective point fire extends to several hundred meters, with area fire beyond that in doctrine. Service footprints cover almost every U.S. conflict since Vietnam and many allied militaries worldwide. Licensed and derivative rifles, such as Canada's C7 C8 family, carried the pattern abroad. Captured stocks have appeared with non-state actors, which means both sides of some battlefields carry AR pattern rifles. Media portrayals from Platoon to contemporary games built the black rifle image. Production exceeded 8 million M16 pattern rifles. In use and service, the M4 carbine now predominates, and the Army's adoption of a next-generation 6.8 system signals a new chapter. Even so, M16s remain in inventories of National Guard, training units, and many partner nations, and the broader AR-15 ecosystem persists as a modular standard. CZ-75. Brothers Joseph and František Koutsky designed the CZ-75 in 1975 at Česká zbrojovka with an eye toward hard currency export markets. Serial production began shortly after, and early short-rail forged frame pistols from 1975 to 79 gained a following among collectors. Because Czechoslovak patents were classified domestically and not filed abroad, foreign firms freely produced unlicensed copies, which is part of why the architecture spread so widely in the 1980s and 1990s. The pistol is a steel-framed, a short-recoil DA/SA design in 9x19 mm, feeding from double-stack magazines typically holding 15 to 18 rounds in full-size versions. The slide runs inside the frame rails, providing a low-bore axis and a distinct lock-up feel. Later B models added a firing pin block, and many variants allow either cocked and locked carry or a decocker option. Ergonomics and trigger geometry made the platform friendly to both service and competition use. Combat exposure in major state conflicts was limited compared to contemporaries, but police adoption proved significant. The compact P-01 earned NATO certification and became a Czech police sidearm. In competition, SP-01 and Shadow derivatives became IPSC mainstays, with shooters winning international titles on tuned variants. The model appeared in European cinema, and in a steady trickle of games, the CZ-75 Auto in Counter-Strike being a notable reference point. Documented production surpassed 1 million by 2007, and cumulative totals have continued to climb through modern variants, such as the Shadow 2 and Tactical Sport lines. The platform remains in production, while clones and derivatives exist from Italy, Israel, Switzerland, Turkey, China, and the Philippines. An older nickname in some German language writing, Brunner pistol, references the Brno connection that enthusiasts still recognize. Colt M911. John Browning's short recoil, tilting barrel pistol design matured into the model of 1911 adopted by the U.S. Army in March of that year, and subsequently by the Navy and Marine Corps. Ergonomic and sighting revisions in the 1920s produced the M1911A1 pattern familiar from the Second World War. The goal at the turn of the century was to replace service revolvers with a reliable self-loading .45, and Browning's locking system became the template for much of the century's pistol design. The pistol is a single-action .45 auto with a 7-round box magazine in standard military trim, a straight-to-the-rear trigger, and both thumb and grip safeties. Field stripping uses the slide stop as the primary disassembly pin. No screws hold the major groups together. Dimensions of the government model remain near 5-inch barrel length, roughly 39 ounces unloaded, with modern variants offering everything from lightweight frames to optics cut slides. Service history spans world wars, Korea, Vietnam, and countless smaller conflicts. Specialized Marine and SOF units kept updated models such as the M45 series into the 21st century. while many foreign services fielded licensed or local copies. The design's endurance is partly explained by an enormous aftermarket barrels, triggers, safeties, sights, and entire custom builds allow tuning for duty, competition, or carry. U.S. contracts alone produced millions by 1945. Adding licensed and later commercial manufacture pushes totals well beyond 4 million across eras. Production remains active worldwide, from large-scale makers to boutique shops. Alternative designations include national issues such as Norway's Kongsberg models and Argentina's Sistema 1927, which show how broadly the architecture propagated. Mossberg 500 series. O.F. Mossberg & Sons introduced the Model 500 in 1961 as a low-cost, modular pump shotgun for hunters. Law enforcement and military interest grew later, especially once the 595-90A1 branch addressed service durability requirements with heavier barrels, metal trigger housings, and bayonet-capable hardware. The family has since expanded into compact, mag-fed, and special-purpose variants. Mechanically, the action uses twin action bars and dual extractors on a rotating bolt to ensure engagement across the locking surfaces. Most guns are 12-gauge, with 20-gauge and 410 options. Barrel lengths from 18.5 inches for defense to more than 26 inches for field use, and tubular magazine capacities from 5+1 up to 8+1. Ghost ring sights, rail-equipped receivers, and interchangeable barrels make configuration straightforward. The Shockwave, with a 14-inch barrel and bird's head grip, exploits federal definitions to offer a very compact format without NFA classification in some jurisdictions. The Gulf War marked first large-scale U.S. military deployment, followed by Iraq and Afghanistan, where breaching and close protection roles were common. Police agencies worldwide keep 500 series guns for patrol and riot control. The pump rack sound is a cultural cliché for a reason. Movies and games used it extensively. Mossberg reports more than 11 million 500 series shotguns produced, making it one of the most manufactured repeating shotguns ever. Production continues in multiple trims, including the 590M with detachable box magazines and the 590A1 for military contracts. The Maverick 88, a budget sibling, shares many parts while lowering entry costs for agencies and civilians. Mosin Nagant. The Russian Empire's need for a modern repeater led to trials in the late 1880s. The three-line rifle, Model 1891, emerged with a Mosin bolt system and contributions from Émile Nagant in magazine and loading details. Adoption occurred in 1891, and production spread from Tula and Ijevsk to foreign contractors in France and the United States during the First World War. The interwar modernization produced the M9130, which would dominate Soviet wartime output. It is a push-feed bolt action chambered in 7.62 by 54 mm R with a 5-round internal box magazine loaded by stripper clips. Standard M9130 rifles carry 29-inch barrels. Carbines such as the M38 and M44 shorten the package, the latter with a folding cruciform bayonet. Sniper models mounted Pu 3.5x optics and achieved dependable precision with selected barrels and ammunition. Finnish derivatives like the M2830 and M39, built to different standards, earned a reputation for accuracy. Service stretches from the Russo-Japanese War through 2 world wars and into the Cold War, with widespread export to allies and clients. Famous names Simo Heiha in Finland, Vasily Zaitsev and Lyudmila Pavlichenko in the USSR linked the rifle to sniper lore. The action even underpins Finland's TKIV-85 sniper rifle, a reminder that surplus receivers found renewed life. Counts commonly cited exceed 37 million rifles worldwide when all national production and post-war conversions are included. Original arsenal production ceased decades ago, but enormous Soviet stockpiles kept surplus rifles flowing to civilian markets and conflict zones. The rifle continues to appear with irregular forces, in ceremonial roles, and on historic firing lines. M1 carbine. A 1941 U.S. Army requirement for a lightweight defensive arm for support troops led Winchester engineers, among them Fred Humston and William Romer, to deliver a carbine around the new .30 carbine cartridge. Production began in mid-1942, and output continued at a remarkable pace through 1945 across a consortium that included Inland GM, Winchester, IBM, and Rock-Ola. Select fire capability arrived late in the war as the M2. The M3 mated an infrared sight to the automatic carbine for night fighting. The design uses a short-stroke gas piston and rotating bolt. With a 17 3/4-inch barrel, an unloaded weight around 5.2 pounds, and 15 or 30 round magazines. Practical effective range sits near 200 yards, which matched the weapon's intended role: more reach and ease than a handgun, less mass and recoil than a service rifle. Reports from cold theaters noted return spring and lubrication sensitivity that armorers addressed with later parts and procedures. Early night fighting experiments with the M3 form one of the first operational uses of active infrared sights by infantry. Production exceeded 6.1 million during the Second World War, the largest small arm run of that period. Post-war aid sent vast numbers to allies in Europe and Asia. Carbines remained a common sight in Korea, early Vietnam, and numerous colonial and revolutionary conflicts. Commercial reproductions continue, and surplus examples circulate widely where policy allows. Notable cultural artifacts, news photos of Malcolm X and Patty Hearst, plus period films kept the carbine visible outside strictly military history. Lee-Enfield family. The Lee bolt system paired with Enfield pattern rifling produced the magazine Lee-Enfield in 1895, evolving into the short magazine Lee-Enfield by 1904, and later the simplified, mass-production friendly No. 4 of the Second World War. Factories across Britain, Canada, Australia, India, and elsewhere manufactured millions. And India's Ishapur later produced 7.6 2x51mm NATO variants as the 2A 2A1. A rear-locking, short-throw bolt, and a 10-round double-column magazine gave the Lee-Enfield exceptional sustained fire for a bolt-action rifle. Charger loading with 5-round clips kept the gun topped off, and trained riflemen could achieve the famed Mad Minute. Typical .303 British ballistics push a 174-grain Spitzer around 2,400 feet per second from standard barrels. Sniper conversions such as the numbered 4T with number 32 optics delivered precision well beyond ordinary service requirements. The later L42A1 repurposed numbered 4 actions for 7.62 auto with new barrels and furniture. Combat service covered the Boer War, both world wars across every Commonwealth theater, Korea, and counterinsurgency campaigns in Asia and Africa. The Nomban 5 jungle carbine reduced length and weight for close country operations, though shooters debated its wandering zero tendencies. In civilian life, many rifles were sporterized post-war, which explains why intact military configuration commands collector interest today. Estimates place total production above 17 million rifles. The pattern persists in ceremonial units and cadet programs and appears in the hands of irregulars where surplus stocks still circulate. Mauser Gewehr 98. Paul Mauser's controlled feed. Large ring action reached maturity with the Gewehr 98, adopted by Germany in 1898 after development from earlier Mauser patterns. It replaced the Gewehr 1888 and became the principal German rifle of the First World War. Millions were produced by 1918. Shorter carabiner forms such as the Kar 98A appeared before the interwar evolution that led to the K98K, but the G98 action itself became the benchmark for military and sporting rifles worldwide. The system uses a 2-lug locking arrangement plus a third safety lug, a non-rotating claw extractor for controlled round feed, robust gas venting paths, and a 3-position flag safety. Chambering in 7.92 by 57 mm, standardized with the S-Patron Spitzer load in 1903, raising velocity and flattening trajectories. The 5-round internal box magazine is topped from stripper clips at the guide in the rear bridge. The long Lange visière sight on early rifles reflects pre-Spitzer ballistics and doctrine. G98 saw combat from the Boxer Rebellion and German colonial wars through the Western and Eastern fronts of 1914 to 18. Post-war rifles flowed into many arsenals Ottoman/Turkish service, Spanish Civil War recipients, and later Israeli stocks cobbled from European captures. The action's reputation in sporting circles owes to its strength and reliability. Countless hunting rifles and magnum actions trace directly to the G98 blueprint. Production during the First World War exceeded 9 million rifles, and many actions were later reworked or sporterized. Modern M98 sporting rifles still come from Mauser and custom builders. If this presentation proved useful, consider sharing it with others who follow firearms history. Subscribe for more of these videos, and additional topic suggestions are always welcome in the comments. Thanks for watching.